guys, we've got a fun review today because we're talking about the prequel to Orphan, Orphan First Kill. When Orphan first debuted back in 2009, I thought it was an awesome, tense thriller with a genuinely surprising twist that I think caught everybody off guard. But with the way that film ended, I didn't really think we were ever going to get any sort of follow-up with Esther whatsoever. But now, 13 years later, we have a prequel film that's coming to theaters and also Paramount+. The prequel obviously follows Esther's escape from an Estonian facility as she travels to America impersonating the missing daughter of a wealthy family. One of the big reasons why I never anticipated any sort of follow-up to Orphan is the fact that Isabelle Fuhrman has gotten much older since 2009. Esther was a brilliant character, but unlike her character, Isabelle Fuhrman does actually age. She's now currently 25 years old. However, through the power of body doubles and forced perspective, she is playing the titular role once again, which I do think is one of the biggest novelties to witnessing this film, is the fact that they didn't recast the role, and that is commendable for them to not just have someone else portray this iconic character. They do their best here to commit to crafting that illusion that Isabelle Fuhrman looks the exact same as she did back in Orphan in 2009. As she continues to run around and do things in this entry with this new family, it's very clear to me that she very visibly does not look the exact same as she did in 2009. She looks much older, sounds much older. Even if you're someone who isn't aware to that twist watching the film, you notice that something is off because there will be many shots where we'll pan out wide and we'll see a little girl running through a hallway, and it's filmed from behind her so you can't see her face, and then it will cut back and you'll see Isabelle Fuhrman. If it isn't that, there are many scenes where all the characters, including Isabelle Fuhrman, are sitting down so you can't really notice the height differences much. But I'm not gonna lie, as the film did progress, I kind of just ignored it. It didn't really bother me all that much. If anything, whether that was the intention or not, there is some amusement in the fact that now she is an actual adult trying to portray a child, as opposed to in the original film where she was a kid trying to act like an adult. Nevertheless, I do think that Isabelle Fuhrman did a great job slipping back into the character of Esther after all these years. In Orphan First Kill, she's still as clever and creepy as she was in that original film, and it was enjoyable witnessing her attempt to weave her way into this family as tensions and suspicions arise from all these various people who don't think that she's actually the missing child. Out of everything going on in the film, I think that she is the thing that makes this film worth watching. What's unfortunate, however, is the fact that because this is a prequel, there's not really much wiggle room when it comes to making an interesting story. The story is extremely basic, and there really is not much you can really explore here with the prequel, and it feels like a sped-up version of that first film because it's just another film where Esther terrorizes another family, but this time with much less suspense. There's not really as much stakes here because you have pretty much a great idea of where we're going to end up by the end of the film. We know that no matter what, Esther gets out of this film unscathed, so because of that fact, this film is very low stakes. Generally in a prequel, you want to explore a character's backstory a little bit more, but that part is unfortunately brushed over to give us another adventure with Esther. And if you paid attention when we got the big reveals in the first film in Orphan, you pretty much know the general idea of what this film is going to be. Horror films in general usually get a much lower budget than other genres. I mean, the original Orphan only cost about $20 million to make, but this film, Orphan First Kill, does feel noticeably cheaper in quality from a filmmaking perspective. You can just tell that they were very limited in the locations and what they were able to do with this kind of budget, because most of the film is confined to the big mansion. We don't really explore any other areas really whatsoever. Like, you always hear about big events in the film, like the dad is going off to do a bunch of different things, like they're getting dressed to get ready to go to stuff, but we don't ever see any of those things. Esther is mainly just confined to the house. Part of that stuff, I think, is what made the first film so interesting, is how we had so many other interesting dynamic locations for Esther to raise hell in. And when most of the stuff, all the crazy stuff really is confined to around the mansion, it's just not as interesting to me. I wanted a little bit more in that aspect when it comes to the thrills and the horror aspects. Despite this, I did find there to be some genuinely intriguing, intense moments between Esther and her mother, portrayed by Julia Stiles, as she is attempting to have to adapt to having who she thinks is her missing child back after so many years apart, and, you know, she grows suspicious as Esther does many things in the film. Just your typical Esther type of things, throwing tantrums in the bathroom, trying her best to convincingly portray this new person in this family dynamic, sneaking in rats in the smoothies, you know, all of the fun stuff. Julia Stiles is really the only other character besides Esther to really talk about in the film, because all the other characters, the male characters, the brother, he's just very obnoxious with his limited screen time, and the father, I mean, he's as dumb as a box of rocks. Whenever we do get him, he is completely oblivious to like anything going on in the film, and I don't know how he functions in reality. It is teased in the marketing that there is a big twist in Orphan First Kill, and while I don't think it rivals the big twist from the original film where Esther is actually a woman in her 30s, it did throw me for a loop when they did reveal the big twist for the plot of this movie. It's definitely random, but it did call me by surprise. It made the film a bit more enjoyable just because of how wacky it is. From a storytelling standpoint, it is kind of frustrating because we watched like about an hour of this film and it kind of is just thrown out the window because you have a detective and all of this other stuff investigating whether or not Esther is really Esther or not, and this twist comes along and just throws that out the window, just burns it all to the ground, and we have a whole new plot for the rest of the film. One big thing I'm actively torn about when it comes to the film is kind of reminiscent to what happened with Don't Breathe 2, is it feels like with the tone here, it seems like they actively want me to root for Esther at certain points in the film. It just feels kind of icky to me at certain points. Her backstory is definitely a sad one, but personally it just felt odd to me as the film story progresses that we're kind of painting her in a more sympathetic light despite all the terrible things that we see her do, and then this twist comes along and now the film pretty much wants me to push towards cheering for her by the end of the third act. I mean, that's at least the vibe I got from the third act here, that you want me to root for Esther to win, even though I know that she's going to make it out alive because this is a prequel. Esther is definitely an intriguing horror antagonist to follow, and I do think it is one of the more fun aspects seeing her do bad things, but I feel like the film kind of misconstrues why I would want to watch the film. Like, I'm not watching the film in hopes that she wins and kills everybody and all that stuff. I just want to see a good horror film with some great thrills and a compelling antagonist that we usually will see get their comeuppance, but since it's a prequel, we don't really see that here. I'm not really sure I would say that Orphan First Kill justified its existence after all these years between this and the original film, but it's a pretty standard companion piece to that first film. If you've been craving another Esther adventure, I think this is going to satisfy your urge to get more of that character. I think Isabelle Fuhrman is great. I don't really think we can continue to explore this character all that much further. This is kind of like our only extra excursion. I mean, maybe. We'll see how successful the film goes. Maybe we'll get a third adventure one way or another, or perhaps we'll even retcon her death somehow at the end of the original. But now that you've heard my thoughts on Orphan First Kill, make sure you share your thoughts down below once you get a chance to check out the film, whether you check it out on Paramount Plus or in theaters, because it is having a limited theatrical run. I'm not really entirely sure how big that theatrical run is going to be. I know it's in the theaters in the Philippines already, but as far as a US release, I'm not really sure. So if you do get a chance to see it in theaters, I'd love to know your thoughts as well, if that changes the experience for you. And did you like the film? Dislike the film? How would you think this compares to the original? I think the original is still far more superior, but as a companion piece, you know, it's serviceable. And also, we got to talk about the twist in the film, at least in some shape or form, because I think it's pretty wild. Like, it's not something that I expected, much like the twist in the original film. It definitely came out of left field for me, so I think we're going to have a lot of discussions about that also in the comment section. Leave all your thoughts down below, though, because for the fun of the conversation with you guys in the comment section. Thank you guys for checking out the reviews. I do appreciate that. Make sure to leave a like on the video and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so you're always updated reviews, reactions, unboxings, and more. For the next time, I'll see you guys later.